What is up, motherfuckers? My guest this week. What is up, motherfuckers? Welcome to episode 57 of Thompsin and Other Disappointments. My guest this week was an old hometown friend. We used to work together in a now bulldozed bowling alley in Maidenhead. It was the site of much debauchery. And while he cut his teeth as a technician and went on to a 20-year career in manufacturing and engineering, I left to treat my body like an amusement park for my 20s and early 30s. So I guess he took a much smarter route out of the bowling alley than I did. We both share a passion for speaking about politics and social issues, though, and I don't know, I thought it'd be good to catch up with him over a beer, discuss fatherhood, careers, opportunity, and yes, also that fucking bowling alley. In fact, there's a part of me that wishes we'd just spent the whole hour reminiscing about the scandalous shit that went on in that place. You could fill 2 box set seasons with all the drama that went on. I have no doubt about that. Netflix, call me. Anyway, with that in mind, please welcome an old friend and my first in-person guest for the poddy, Mr. Ryan Bennett. Yeah, like for a Saturday job, it was sort of, I don't know how much I can compare this to other people's Saturday jobs, but in my experience, like I worked in a couple of supermarkets before that, and I worked at a fairground. And then after I left the bowl, I worked in like sales support, but then I suppose that was a bit more career-y by that point. But my take on working in that bowling alley was that it was actually like a fun place to work, whereas some of my friends who didn't work in the bowling alley,
completely,
they were like, "Oh, I fucking hate my job. Oh, my boss is such a dick." Whereas people who worked at the bowl were just
this is 16-year-olds, so
yeah. Yeah, like it was just, I don't know, it's like a fun place. It's like going into, like, I tell you the void that it fills for some people, I think, is like when you go to uni,
yes,
you meet some friends for life.
You make friends, you drink, you go shagging.
Yeah, house share,
yeah,
all that stuff. And that's kind of, like I went to uni.
I'm talking about shagging quite a lot.
Yeah, well, I mean, when you're a dad and it's like...
Things slow down a little bit.
Yeah, we're like reliving past glory. That's really what this episode will be about, is...
reliving past glories of Maidenhead and the Hobgoblin pub.
Okay, here's a slightly deep question for you.
Go for it.
So you mentioned that rather than thinking about like, what's going to be a rewarding, fulfilling career, but it did kind of give you this footing to get into manufacturing.
Yeah.
But yet for other people who were engineers in the back of the bowling alley, did not go on to a 20-year career in manufacturing.
Yeah.
What do you think is different about those two types of personalities?
I don't know. So it was, for me, part of it, I was slightly fortunate in that I'd seen an advert in the paper for apprenticeships at the...
It's like another era, isn't it? Like adverts in the paper.
Adverts in the paper, exactly.
We're such old bastards.
There's young people listening to this right now going, what the fuck's a newspaper?
Yeah. You had to go and read in a paper. You didn't get a notification
in the local rag.
Yeah,
there was an advert for they're advertising apprenticeships, which strangely enough are back in fashion again.
Yeah,
they weren't really at the time. So I applied for apprenticeship and I went through that. But based on the experience that I already had, they said it'd probably be a waste of time you doing an apprenticeship.
Yeah,
we'll just offer you a job in the factory instead.
Okay.
So. I came out of that slightly better, but that was not through any skill of my own. That was just based on what I was doing currently.
Yeah,
the skill set that I had, and having somebody that saw something in me when they interviewed me and said, "Yeah, this guy's going to be all right." 21 years later, I'm still there. So
yeah,
that person must have seen something. But I wanted to do something. I had some sort of desire to find a job in a career something that was going to last me a long time. I didn't sort of want to be skipping from one job to another, and that was something that appealed to me.
Is that something that did you have that though, like in your early 20s, or was that something like your parents were like, no, you need a career?
My parents never put any pressure on me at all to essentially, find find a well-paid career or something lucrative. They were again quite fortunate from that. And so my youngest sister and what she does, so they were very sort of free with us to be able to sort of choose our own way in life. So I feel quite fortunate about that. It's definitely something that I wanted to do. I wanted to get myself something stable. I wanted to be independent. I wanted to get myself moved out, have my own place, and do that sort of
independence.
Thing. Exactly. So and I think that's probably something in my nature as well, in that I am quite independent. I'm in the early 40s now, but I've always been pretty independent and all right on my own. So something probably that I sort of wanted to do, and finding this job gave me the kind of ability to be able to do that reasonably early in life.
Because it was quite early. I remember you leaving the bowl, and then I think so you left when I was about 20, I think.
Yeah, it would have been about that. Yeah, because we're like the same age. So.
Yeah, and then so whilst you made that leap into your career job, into this new employer, and you've been there for 20 years.
Fell into it.
Right, but it's so you. Okay, so there's a slight difference there in terms of my perspective of what you did and what you pursued. But still, I think so you made that move when I was 20, and then I fucked around for another 15 years after that.
I don't know many people our age that didn't fuck around when they were in their early 20s, because who the fuck walks out of school at the local comprehensive, which is where we didn't send the same school, went to different schools together, but who walks out at 16 or 18 years old and says, this is my chosen career path, and they walk into a job and then they do that job for the rest of their life? It just doesn't happen these days. It's just not a thing. So it's different to like the 1970s, 1980s, when kids left school at 16 and said, I want to be a welder, and they just work as a welder for the next 45 years until their eyes burn out of their skull and then they fall down dead. That's pretty much what happened to huge swathes of people. Yeah. And now the world is a very, very different place. In just 40 years, it's moved on a lot.
Yeah. I mean, so what you're alluding to there is our sort of like our parents and our grandparents' generation. And yeah, you're right. I mean, my dad's situation was slightly different in that. So he slogged away to try to get into media, like broadcasting work, for a while.
Notoriously difficult to get into, anyway.
Yeah, well, he went through like the newspaper route and succeeded. Like he ended up moving into radio journalism, and at his peak, he was working at like Radio 2. But it's like. So it was like a 30-40 year career, but it was job hoppy. Like
it was the same or similar work, but for different.
Yeah.
To be honest, Aid, that is how things are for younger people now.
Yeah.
So they will get into a job. They will do that job for maybe 2 to 3 years, and then they have to job hop in order to increase their income. Because if you're staying loyal to one employer. Like you really get nowhere these days. You're not. They don't say to you, "Here, have a 10% pay rise every year for your as a reward for your loyalty for staying and doing the same job." It just doesn't happen. So
they give you, isn't it like the cliche is that you work somewhere for like 10, 15, 30 years or so, and then they give you like a cheap Argos watch, and they're like, "Thanks for your service,
Elizabeth Duke."
Yeah.
Yes. Thank you. Or a tie. You get a polyester tie.
Or a hug. Just a hug.
Just a hug and a card.
30 seconds on the podium at the end of year awards.
And have a week's wages as a bonus for your service. So that is, and quite rightly so, we've increased expectations of the younger generation, Gen Z. They have higher expectations. They don't want to leave school at 16 or 18 and just be a van driver for the rest of their life. They see that now as a side hustle, but I want a main career, and then I can drive a van or deliver for Deliveroo, Uber Eats, whatever, on the side in the evenings, on the weekends, and make a bit of extra cash.
Yeah.
So it's not a career choice like it was 40 years ago. They say, well, I want to be a computer programmer. I want to get into financial technology. and that's how I can really get on in life, and I can do something that's gonna really benefit me.
Yeah, that's interesting actually. I mean, in terms of the opportunity, to earn significant financial security levels of money, it's never been easier for younger and
Those
younger
jobs
people
are out there.
Yeah, like if you I always talk about like teaching my son how to code. Like he's 5 now, so I think in another year I'll start him on like the little courses that basically
you can do those ones where you put the blocks in.
Exactly,
yeah.
I mean, this is stuff that I learned when I was 35 because you have to start with the basics, right? But it was humiliating for me because it would just be like pulling like a little bubbly if statement in and move this one over there and then like a happy hedgehog like sings to you.
That's right.
That's your reward for doing the coding. But for him, obviously, this would be fun.
Sure.
But if you start a child off at like 6 learning that stuff, it's totally possible that they could be earning money like day rate contractor by 15, 16.
They can have a 6-figure salary in their early 20s.
Yeah, oh, absolutely. Like I mean, I worked with a guy at Sky. He was about 20 and he had already worked around the world as a contractor. And he I mean, morally, I don't know how I feel about this, but he was talking at it like within the office about how he was setting up like what's it called?
Like offshore.
A system of shell companies. That's or something.
Right. Yeah. And you just move the money around to avoid any payment.
Yeah.
Tax avoidance.
So something along those lines. I remember him.
Not tax evasion.
No, avoidance. I mean, that's not. I don't think that's legal either. But
morally, yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I remember thinking like, what? Like he's just talking about this like freely, openly, and he was like to me, I was 35. This was one of my first like placements as a sort of junior apprentice programmer.
Yep.
And I was just thinking, he's a kid.
Wow.
And he's and he's probably old. He's like long in the tooth in terms of like some of the kids who they start off messing around with their dad who's a programmer, and then by the time they're like 18, they're whiz kids on Java, and they go and work in a bank and.
Yep. So I read online just this week a young lad. He was 20 years old, and he'd been taken on by an unnamed company as a crypto expert.
Yeah.
For £150,000 a year salary.
Really?
And he'd been following crypto since he was 15 years old.
Yeah.
And had become that's just all he'd done. And it was a particular job that this particular firm wanted to employ someone for.
Yeah.
And he was the best person for the job. And they'd offered him a salary of 100k, and he'd walked away and said it's not enough. And then eventually they came back and offered him 150. So that's a significant investment of this firm's money into crypto, because the rate of growth over the last couple of years in that far outstrips any hedge funds, investments, venture capitalism, commodity trading, all of that traditional ways of gradually increasing wealth, but especially for financial institutions, blown out the water by the growth in Bitcoin and Ethereum and those sorts of stuff. So.
Yeah, I mean it's like, and it doesn't even sit solely within the programming sphere. Like a scenario that I often terrify myself about is like, as a father of a daughter, how would you handle, like you've got kids, right? Have you got a boy and a girl? Or
just got a girl.
Little girl. Okay, so
4.5. How
would you handle it when she's like 15 or 16 and she has like 400,000 followers on something like TikTok?
Social media influencer.
Yeah, but all she's doing is like dancing around in her pants. And you're saying to her, like...
Can you monetize that?
yeah, that's what you say.
Is there enough money for Daddy to retire?
I mean, I suppose that's the thing. Like, you have to be supportive. But I thought about this scenario where, like, she comes up to me and she's just like, all these people love...
My daughter?
No.
All right, yeah.
That'd
be a little bit creepy.
Yes, yeah. No, like, if my own daughter says... They just love my dancing, Dad. I'm like, no, they fucking don't.
It's not your fucking dancing, love.
Yeah.
It's the pants.
But then, she's going to get offended and upset because she's going to think that you think that her dancing's shit. That's where you're coming from.
Yeah.
But you have to break it to her that there's some really dark creeps in the world.
Yeah. But who knows what the internet's going to look like in 10 years' time? don't know, even if you can manage to cast your mind back even just 10 years and think about website design, think about what websites looked like even 10 years ago compared to how they are now.
Yeah.
What's the internet going to look like in another 10 years? Is it going to be heavily regulated? Is it going to be a total free-for-all? Is it just going to be full up with the only way you can get on the internet is through paid advertising? Is it?
I think it'll all be metaversey.
Yeah.
That's my
my
hunch. It's not particularly groundbreaking, but I feel
everything
like
everywhere, everything connected.
Yeah, like not to get too depressing about it, but I feel like if people have the choice of living in a climate change devastated world and catching new variants and being laid out for 3 months with long COVID-29 or whatever we're on then, or just strapping on their Matrix helmet
and put the virtual reality goggles on and
living in a fantasy and I could fucking risk my health, or I could go off into the Matrix and
we could just sit in your shed.
Well, I mean, that's basically what it like. You see where I'm headed with this. I've got a green screen there and
Yeah, that's it.
But yeah, so I think people will opt quite depressingly to spend their lives in a fantasy.
And I think we've already started to see the beginning of that through the coronavirus epidemic in 2020. Huge amounts of people driven to working at home instead of travelling into an office. We found a lot of new ways to do things that we perhaps hadn't considered in the past. Who would have thought that team meetings would have been done over the internet on Microsoft Teams or on Zoom? Other providers are available. Rather than face-to-face meetings and people doing their jobs, be it end project managing or computer programming, just doing it all from home and sending their work in on the internet.
I mean, the cliche is like people say that we were headed in this direction anyway. It's just that COVID
just forced it.
Hurried it along a lot. I don't know if I fully agree with that. There's so many work from home jobs now where I don't know. Am I talking out my arse? I don't know. I feel like
again.
I feel like social jobs in FTSE 100 companies, like let's say a project support analyst, somebody who has to go in between different team meetings, collect notes and report back to a board and all that stuff. I just don't know if that would. To me, that always feels like a sort of office-based role. But I might be wrong because it's.
But you just do that on Teams now, wouldn't you? Just connect to people on.
Yeah, but is it the same?
It's not, but.
I mean, you can do the job. I know what you mean. Like you could do that job remotely.
Can you do it? Yes, you can. And I think if large numbers of people are given the choice between, do you want to come back to the office 5 days a week, or do you want to do some sort of hybrid thing where you maybe come into the office on a Monday and we have a team meeting all together face to face on a Monday, but the rest of the week, you can sort of do your own thing in your PJs at home. You haven't got to get out of bed until 8 o'clock. You've not got to sit on the smelly train sniffing Mr. Onion's armpits for an hour. Most people are going to take that choice, aren't they? Especially if their salary stays the same. Yeah.
Do you know what's like weird about work from home is that there's this. People have it in their heads that it's like a generational divide, that the older generations don't get it and that they think the younger generation are just being lazy and they just want to, like you say, like stay at home in the PJs. But actually, in my experience, it's the really younger ones in the teams that want to come into the office for like the social aspect. Like
definitely.
I was on a Teams call a few months ago and they were sort of taking a show of hands of who would, who wants to come back to the office. Like trying to be consultative, trying to get everyone's feel for it. And it was the two young'uns that were like, I just like being amongst it. Thursday night social.
Epic bants, innit?
And I get it. Like I understand, because when I was sort of, young, free and single, city drinks was a big thing like on a Thursday. But then, like, I mean, I'm 41.
It's part of fitting in. It's part of.
And
we're social animals, right?
But there was there has always been a big thing about like that there's a huge chance that you will meet your significant other through your job. So if you are young and single,
if you haven't already met them at uni,
well, yes, there is that. So yeah, slightly different topic. It's been a bit of a wild week.
Yes,
in
topsy-turvy.
Politics. Little bit.
Has this week been any more or less wild than the last couple of weeks?
I don't know. I read a tweet the other day where they said it was as the blackmail revelations were breaking. So it must have been yesterday, and somebody quote tweeted it and said like, "Oh, I see the end of season episode." Is it?
Yeah. I thought it was funny that the blackmail accusations have come from the MP who's crossed the floor and gone to the Labour Party and said, "Those lot over there are a bunch of wankers. I don't want to work for them anymore. And here's why." Yeah, and he's just given it that very much in the same way that Dominic Cummings just pulled Boris's pants down and fucked him right in the arse when he left, and he's going to continue to do so for some period of time. Yeah, every now and again, just dropping one out. Oh, by the way, here's what else happened. They were having drinks whilst all you poor bastards were isolating in your homes. Yeah, couldn't see anybody outside of your own house. They were all in there getting pissed up with suitcases full of wine. So, how about that?
Yeah, it's kind of the thing that fascinates me about it. Obviously, apart from the grossness that everyone's appalled by, but the thing, like, it's in 100 years' time, you could look back at this period as like the themes that run through this, like power, jealousy, rejection, revenge. Like, it's like a fucking Shakespearean character study.
It's been Boris Johnson's government has been described this week as some sort of like mafioso regime where he's saying to people, "No, you toe the company." I'm not going to do a Boris Johnson impression. You toe the company line, and then you can have your funding for your levelling up agenda. I'll give you the money for that new hospital that you're promising your constituents, or your new school. As long as you toe the company line, and if you don't want to do that, you're out in the cold, buddy. Sorry. Yeah.
But it's even. I mean, I know people are rightly appalled by that.
Yes.
But it's more gross than that, even from a systemic point of view, because what people are upset about is this idea of a sort of mafia setup where, like you say, like Johnson says, "I'm not fucking signing off on that school, so all your kids are going to go uneducated unless you scratch my back and say that Brexit's amazing." Like that sort of arrangement. But actually, if you pan out and you look at the way that the MPs are whipped to support stuff.
I was just going to get onto that, actually. If you look at the way that politics is structured in this country,
it's fucking nuts.
It's a two-party system in all but name. Yeah. In that it's either the Conservatives or Labour is going to be the ruling government for the foreseeable future, unless anything changes, and that's inherent in the first past the post political system. That's just how it's going to go. And the pantomime politics that goes on in Westminster, and the jeering and the name calling and that sort of stuff. There's no other job that you can do. There's no other job that you can do where you can get sacked today from that job, walk out with your cardboard box full of your British Bulldog ornaments and your cactus, walk out of there and then carry it back in next door tomorrow and get a job as Minister for Transport. It's totally bonkers the way that it works.
Yeah, but the I guess the problem from a government or a ruling party or a party with any influence's perspective is that it's like better the devil you know. Like, they don't want to overhaul it, even though it obviously desperately needs overhauling.
The whole thing needs a total and utter rethink from the ground up. How does national government work in this country? How does local government work in this country and be funded? How do we get the right people into politics? How do we attract people into politics that are people that actually genuinely care about? And I'm not saying that there's not politicians in there that care about their local constituency, because there's loads that really do and do fantastic work locally. There's also so many people that are just in it as a career in politics. They started as a researcher or whatever, and they end up going into
junior aid. Then they work for a lobbying firm, and they get parachuted into some cosy constituency.
And all they've known is politics, and working for the government, and they've got no real world experience. They probably went to Eton or Harrow. They've probably come from a lot of money. They don't have the same exposure to the people in their constituency that are battling with at the moment, the high cost of living, high energy bills, high food prices, which, all right, a bag of pasta might have gone up from 50p to 60p. If you're a middle income earner, that's not a lot of money, but to someone on a low income earner, that's a 20% increase, and that's 20% that's been cut out of their food budget for that week. So again, it hits the poorest in society the most. But these people that they're MP, they don't see that as a problem. So like, well, it's only gone up from 50p to 60p. It's only 10p. What's the why are you crying?
The thing that pickles my onions with that sort of shit is like
fucking boils my piss.
It's like it always feels like I want to be open-minded, and I want to sort of say, like, I did a TikTok earlier today where I was like, what would it take for you to vote Tory?
Are you young enough to go on TikTok?
Probably not.
No.
Inarguably not. But but I like going on there and doing like political TikToks and getting and I did this thing like, what would it take for you to vote Tory, in the sense that I might be able to be won over into conservatism at some point, but what would it take? What would their branding need to look like? Who would have to be the leader? What would their policies look like? Because if you're the sort of person who says, like, I could never vote Tory, fuck 'em, burn down conservative HQ, like, they're all evil.
And there's lots of people in the country that feel that way, and they would never, ever vote Conservative.
Sure.
As long as they're...
Fine. But I think if you're going to adopt that mentality, you have to accept it for what it is, which is tribal binary loyalty, and that you have to accept that you don't come across reasonable if you like that.
Yeah.
So I like to sort of play with this idea of like I'm not in any danger of voting Conservative in the near future, but what would it need to look like? I don't think
anybody is, are they?
No, not if the polls are to be believed. Right, what was my fucking point now? I've gone way off piece.
Why would anyone vote Conservative? What
were you saying before that?
I don't know. I'm just running my mouth here.
Yeah, no, I remember now. So the thing that bothers me is like when you have these Conservative MPs who don't adopt any of the attributes that would win me over, for example, and instead what you get is not self-made people, not people with any real-world experience. You get Etonian, Cambridge, lobbying firm, silver spoon cunts who, when the constituent approaches them and says, like, the cost of food, the cost of pasta has gone up by 20%, what the fuck am I supposed to do? Then they say, well, you might have to work harder.
Speak to my secretary, is what they say.
Probably, yeah. Or can you get the riffraff out? Yeah. Like, but in their minds, they're like, well, you have to work harder. That's why you're poor.
Yeah,
that's why
you just pull yourself up by your bootstraps.
Yeah.
You just need to work harder.
But they've had everything fucking given to them.
Yes.
So it's like I could accept maybe an element of that, a layer of that, if it was coming from someone who had come from poverty and worked their way out of it, maybe.
I've got an interesting anecdote. Many years ago, an experiment was done with the family favourite game of Monopoly.
Oh, right.
So there's 4 people set up to play Monopoly, and 2 people were given more money to start with, and they also, when they passed go, they got 250 instead of 200. Okay, and that was the rules, and that was the game that they played. When inevitably one of those 2 people won the game, they attribute it to superior thinking power and tactics in the game, rather than the game inherently being loaded in their favour.
Yeah.
So there's part of our psyche that says, well, if I'm doing well for myself, that's because of my own hard work and my own ingenuity has got me into that position, rather than them starting at that point and this other person starting way up there, and then saying, well, why are you all the way down there?
Yeah.
Why don't you just work harder, get a better job, and then you'll have as much money as me and be as successful as me, and
what about the angle?
Almost be as attractive as me.
What about the angle where the person starts with a little bit more money, and every time they pass go, they get a little bit more money than the other person, right?
They do.
And then when the person who started with the least money gets a little bit more, and is proud of what they've achieved, then they go, look, I've bought Pall Mall and like Old Kent Road and all of these other ones. And then the person that had the more, that's really crass. Don't.
Yeah, there's no need to crow about those.
Yeah, that's really uncouth. Don't do that.
And that's genuinely how it works. And unfortunately, that's hardwired in there.
Yeah, I mean, it's sort of. I suppose it all comes down to ego, really, doesn't it? Everyone wants to tell themselves the nice, comforting story that the reason that they are where they are is because they were shrewd and and smarter than the competition.
Yeah. And we were chatting the other day about our parents' generation who have made a mint out of the property that they bought for £6.83 in 1975.
Yeah,
and had to scrape quite hard to get a week's wages together to buy the house.
Oh yeah,
in that time.
Proper graft.
And since then, the price of that property has exploded in 50 years, such that they're in their 70s now sat on a property that's worth £500,000.
Yep.
And they say to themselves that was due to my shrewd choice to buy a property at that time. And that's what's made me all this money, and I was clever enough to buy in a good area that's really sort of come up in value, and they feel quite smug about it when it's through no doing of their own at all. It's just the fact that successive governments have not built enough houses in this country. Houses have become an investment idea, and there's vast swathes of properties that sat around the country with nobody in them because they've just been bought up by companies as an investment because they know the price is going to go up 10% a year. That's better than what you're going to get from buying stuff in the bank.
I mean, if you've got liquid cash in the bank, you'd be a fucking idiot to not put it into property. I know people get very emotive, and some of my followers and subscribers get very emotive about this stuff. When they're talking about landlords, they're just like they're fucking leeches, Aid, and they just they take up housing. Yeah. People desperately need these houses, and if every landlord in Bognor Regis sold their then there would be sufficient houses for the same number of homeless people that there are. And I get all of that, but if you look at it from an investor's point of view, anyone's point of view, if I have 200 grand in the bank, that cash is going to devalue. Yeah.
Well, interest rates now, they're saying 5-6%,
and then you throw like quantitative easing into the mix. Every year the money gets worth less and less.
Being eroded,
so your options are to put them into stocks and shares, which you could do, which if you'd put them into tech stocks at like 10 years ago, I'm sure you'd be laughing.
Be retired by now.
Or Bitcoin if you want to ride that wave.
Go crypto.
Or you can go safe as houses, Ryan.
Safe as houses. And I think a lot of people in our parents' generation again have done that, and they say we'll buy a second property rather than we'll buy a second property, we'll rent that out, and that's our pension taken care of. And they've physically been able to do that because of the astronomical rise of the value of the property that they bought. Most of them would have been on final salary pensions, and when they're retired after working for the same firm for 35 years, a nice lump sum of money. You see these people on these property programs. Hello, this is Dave. He's a beekeeper, and his wife Adeline makes wax candles from her arse juice, and they've got a modest budget of 1.7 million to buy a property in the Cotswolds. And that's these people, the money has just fallen into their lap. They've not done anything particular to anybody different of their generation, and it's just landed there. So they said, okay, well, what can we do as a nice little retirement income? Let's invest in property. So all of these places have been bought, and the vast majority of landlords in this country are one property owners. So they own and live in their own property, and then they own one other property, which is the one that they rent out as a landlord. And I suppose that sort of goes back to like if you, let's say you bought in the 80s and then you paid off that mortgage, you're sitting on a huge nest egg, like let's say 500, 600, 700 grand now at this point. It's not a huge stretch for you to do an equity release, get like 50, 60 grand out of that, and then I suppose this is where like the era of people like effectively bequeathing house deposit money came from to give to their kids. I mean, I wasn't in that situation, unfortunately, but and then the other the other layer to this is like when I can't remember if it's Gordon Brown
or if it was David Cameron, but somewhere around that period, didn't they start taxing pensions quite heavily? It was like a pensions raid, and so then that pushed the older generations to go like, well, hang on a second, if I'm going to get taxed on my savings,
right. Yeah, he's early 2000s. That was,
yeah, they were like, right, I can actually take out a huge chunk and then put that into something.
Because now you can do an income drawdown on your pension, and you don't have to buy an annuity with it. That's come more recently, I think, in the last 10 years. You don't have to buy an annuity with your pension that pays you, money every week. You can take your own money out, and as long as you're not going to go and buy a Ferrari with it and crash it off a cliff into the sea, you can invest it as you see fit. So you could use that as a 15% deposit on a property, and then you've got your income from that. Yeah. Renting a property out at 1,400 or 1,500 quid.
They used to do. Do you know Tom Ponton? Don't know if you.
I don't know.
No, he used to. Well, I sort of know him from London, but he's originally from Henley, and he knew Stuart through people. And anyway, he was on a episode of this a while back, and we were talking about the housing crisis, and we talked about bonds and how the older generation used to use that as sort of like guaranteed income because it was seen as a really solid investment. Wouldn't make you a millionaire, but it was good.
But it would give you a gentle return, 4%, 3%, something like that.
And because governments never default on bond yield,
that's right.
I think I'm using the correct terminology, then it's pretty safe. And then the return on bonds tanked around, I think I'm correct saying this, around the global financial crash.
Yes, 2008. Yeah, they went down to less than 1%, I think.
Yeah, and so then again, like if let's say you're 60, 65 years old, you're retired, you got this pension, traditionally you would have bought into bonds, traditionally you would have I don't know, like invested in something.
Bought an annuity.
And now you've got this big tax bill coming. You can totally see. I don't begrudge anyone like over the age of 60 who's bought into that. I totally get it. I understand.
You do what you need to do, right? And you think about, well, I've got this money. What's going to be the best thing that I can do with it for my future, for my children's future? Yeah. How best to invest it, and then go and speak to someone that calls himself a financial advisor, and they would say, this is where you need to put your money. Put it into property, safe as houses, like you said. Safe as houses, geez. Yeah. Put it in, and you'll be fine. So any of the pitfalls about being a landlord and about having a tenant in that's going to trash your property, and all the liabilities that you have as a landlord. So I know a lot of the older generation have done that and been burnt. And then there's the other problem of them buying a second property not to rent out but to have it as a holiday home. Down in Bognor Regis or Cornwall or Wales, Norfolk, these beautiful places that completely alienated the local market. The young people that live there that would traditionally have been looking to get onto the property ladder at about 150,000, now looking at 250,000 because there's no small bolt holes that would traditionally be your first property, because they've all been bought up by people that live up country.
Yeah, it's quite. I was going to say it's quite sad. Then immediately Margate popped into my head.
Yeah, Margate's another one. Yeah,
which is sort of, they've been like, imagine if you were trying to get on the ladder in Margate. People already own holiday homes there, and then a fuck ton of hipsters are just like, whoa, we should move to Margate, motherfucker. Like, and then
it's an hour and a half on the train from central London.
Oh, people fucking love it. Like, I worked with a woman who lived in Margate, and she just started renting there, and she was like, she's an American lady. She was like, I never want to leave. It's so great. And I was like, intrigued, because
it's like Sleepy Hollow. It's just.
Like, I don't know what it's. I've never been there, but 2 people now have told me that it's right up my street, and I'm wondering if maybe I should.
I've never been there, but by all accounts, it's like how Brighton used to be.
Really?
Yeah. So
a bit creative, a bit artsy.
And it's by the sea. It's beautiful.
Has it turned? Have you been there?
No.
Oh, okay. I was going to say, like, has it turned that corner, right? Because there's this corner. There should be a name for this.
Is that the corner where the head disappears up the own arse?
Yes, it should be called the arse head curve. Yeah. Really, I mean, it needs a name basically, but like this. So
we've just named it. So
the arse head curve.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, I'm going to describe it.
Stick.
If I may.
If we say it enough, it'll stick.
So it's like Here's the sort of near the curve, right? I guess. And then that's where things are kind of cool and a bit trendy and a bit edgy. Then you get right up to the top, which is where people, like, is where Peckham is now, where people flood into Peckham because it's super cool and super edgy. And then it sort of when it just gets over the edge of that is when it becomes like Camden or like Shoreditch now, where it just becomes a fucking parody of itself.
Hateful.
I Love London t-shirts everywhere. Tat stores.
TV programs filmed there because this is the trendy place to go, and everybody knows Camden. And you've got the bridge with Camden Lock written in the background. And
exactly.
It becomes an iconic destination.
It's like the difference between
just want to throw a can of petrol on it and set fire to it.
Pretty much, yeah.
Start again.
I mean, like when I lived in Brick Lane, and it was like that because
don't do arson, kids.
Yeah, we're not. Well, I should remind you again, any legal types. Ryan is not speaking on behalf of anyone but Ryan tonight. But yeah, like when I lived in...
did say low budget.
It's pretty... should have said low rent.
Low rent, low budget, low IQ.
Yeah. It's just lower than low. When I was in Brick Lane, it was kind of like that. And when I was... I never lived in Camden, but I always felt like Camden was sort of up. It's like
there must have been something that attracted you to want to go and live in Brick Lane, right? And
I was a massive twat.
Not just your love for curry.
No, although the curries were good. Yeah. But it was just I remember thinking, like, consciously, because at the time I think I was 30 or 31. And I remember thinking I've always wanted to live in like a place that's actually cool, instead of like I'd lived in Docklands, which is objectively not cool.
Well, yeah.
And then Muswell Hill, which was nice, but not particularly cool.
Yeah.
And I was doing music and comedy and stuff, and I was just like, if I don't do it now at like 30 or 31, I'll be too old to do it, and it'll be like, I'll be that old guy.
People are already asking questions of you at 31. What are you doing here?
Well, 31 in London years is like,
Yes, you're still living with your parents, aren't you? In 30, 31, because you can't afford to buy a place in London.
That's like I always imagine it like. Sorry, I'm going all over the place, but like, if you walk into a pub in London wearing a band T-shirt with your hair in dreadlocks and Doc Martens on and ripped jeans, but you're like 43 years old, nobody would really bat an eyelid.
No,
nobody
really.
care.
No. It's the same, even if you still have a pink mohawk from when you were a punk in 1979.
Even if you lived in a house share at like 43 and that was your life, like people would be like, yeah, cool, that's...
Yes, you do you, huh?
That's Jed over there, and he's, But like if you're 43 in Maidenhead and you're wearing a band T-shirt, like, it's a different thing.
Theresa May would probably look down on you.
It's just there's a definite difference. It's like dog years. But yeah, like going back to the sort of the Brick Lane and the Camden thing, like it's the difference for me is like when you move into a sort of edgy, cool area where there's artists and there's musicians and there's graffiti and there's open mic gigs and stuff like that. That's cool. And then when it moves over the arse head curve, then actually it becomes...
The head starts getting closer to the arsehole.
That exact moment. Then it's advertising agencies and digital marketing because they want to be in the cool edgy thing, but it's too late. It's gone.
And TV crews.
And TV crews, yeah.
Yep.
And that's when so if you go to Shoreditch now, nobody fucking lives in Shoreditch anymore. No artists live in Shoreditch. It's all like city boys who want to live somewhere cool or like ABC marketing.
Chasing the curve.
It's a tragedy really of certainly London. I don't know how far out it's spread, but like the gentrification stuff is pretty tragic in the sense that it's the artists who move into a broke, cheap area and then kind of make it cool and trendy. And then the city boys and the advertising agencies go, that place is really cool and hip and happening and
really bohemian,
super boho, bro. and then it fucking kills it.
Yeah, it's a shame really. How we've got to that from getting onto the property ladder from your first job at 16.
There'll be some like fucking wise. I was going to say wise ass. Like comment saying like, well, 1 minute you're supporting landlords and like people taking up property, and the next minute you're going, ooh.
Next minute you're cunting them off. What's the matter with you?
I've changed my mind in the last 5 minutes.
I'm allowed to.
Yeah, I'm allowed to reverse out of this cul-de-sac.
Yeah, completely. That's that's the whole point of having a discussion about it, isn't it?
Yes. Yeah. So yeah, here's a random question, a sort of a conversation hand grenade to throw at you. So you've lived in Berkshire. You're in Berkshire still now?
I'm in Berkshire, yeah. Yeah.
Your whole life?
Bonnie Bracknell. Berkshire, yeah, my whole life, apart from a short time. I rented a room in West London when I was working there in Acton for a short time. I worked at the bowling alley there before
I remember Acton. Park Royal.
Yes, Park Royal.
Has that been bulldozed? Because it fucking should be.
So the nightclub, I believe the nightclub has. I believe that the bowling alley lives on.
Okay.
Yeah.
Survived.
That was
one fucking PlayStation.
That was not pleasant. It was eye opening to a 19-year-old. People getting stabbed in the car park. When the nightclub chucked out.
I saw two girls talking and laughing with each other 1 minute. I turned around because I was DJing, because I was super cool. And when I turned back round, one of them had glassed the other one. Yeah. I was like, how the fuck did that go so bad?
How did that go nuclear in such a short period of time?
But it's like, I came away with this sort of feeling
that's acting.
That's how they communicate. It's like, it was part of the conversation was that she had, that was like the full stop was, you know?
Have that.
Yeah, but I was going to say, like, so you've lived in Berkshire for the majority of your life.
Yeah, nearly my whole life, yeah.
And we talked about the housing crisis.
Yes.
And we sort of touched on how fucked British politics is, certainly at the moment. Do you think you would ever pack up your family and just fuck off?
Yeah. Where would beg the question where? So, do you mean like fuck off abroad somewhere or somewhere else in the UK?
I mean, just like no, emigrate, like
just go
a different country.
Abroad. Yeah. I think I'm of an age now where I'm far too settled. So I've been in the same career for 21 years. I'm ingrained in the local area. I do enjoy travelling, and I've been lucky enough to travel all around the world, different continents, the Americas, all across Europe, Asia. So I've been lucky. I've seen a lot of the world, and part of that has come from the job that I've done. Has enabled me to be able to
get around
afford to have a holiday and say, oh yeah, I can take off 2 weeks to just go to Hong Kong and Taiwan and China. Do you know what I mean? Like I can go and do that, or I can go and have 2 weeks on a beach in Florida. Like so. I've been very fortunate on that, and I'm a definite advocate of travel broadens the mind.
Yeah.
It helps you to understand other people and how they're coming from. But could I go and do it permanently live abroad? Probably not. I'm not that brave. I'm somebody that's inherently risk averse. Just the jeopardy in moving to another country is beyond me. I have 3 sisters. The eldest one lives in Spain. She got up and said, "No, fuck this. I've had enough of the UK. I'm going." So she moved to Spain about 8 years ago. I'm very happy there. My youngest sister tried it for a year, didn't get on, came back to the UK. For me, I'm quite settled. I enjoy the mundane. I enjoy knowing where I am every week. So it's not for me, but I think it has to be inherently in you, and I think you're certainly willing to take more risks when you're in your 20s compared to when you're in your 40s. Like in your 20s you can be a percentage of reckless. You can afford to be reckless because you've got plenty of time to recover. When you're in your 40s and you've got a young family and your children are in school, you think, the potential to fuck my child's life up by moving to another country. My child doesn't get on. They don't learn the local language.
Disruptive.
They get bullied for being the outsider. All those things would sort of go through your head, and you think, well, actually, I think things are okay as they are. Yeah,
that is a big thing, isn't it? Because I often toy with the idea of like, what would life look like for us if we just packed up and then moved to like Bali? Because there's this there's a big digital nomad thing going on.
Yeah. So during the pandemic, Mauritius were offering year-long visas to people that wanted to come and work remotely.
Really? Yeah. I mean, it's super tempting, and it's like there's no real reason. Like, I mean, earlier I was talking about how some roles are sort of social and you need to be interacting with different teams and stuff, but I'm very fortunate in the sense that I can just sit here and code, push the code, somebody checks it, then somebody deploys it, and that's the it. Like, I could literally do it anywhere in the world.
Anywhere in the world, yeah.
And with a UK salary, if we lived in Bali, we could live a significantly more comfortable lifestyle.
Yeah.
Plus, I'm just sort of built for a hot climate. I fucking hate this cold shit.
Hate the cold.
I just can't. The best couple of years of my life, I swear to God, was like I went travelling to Thailand and Australia, and then came back to the UK like when it was summer. I didn't have a winter for fucking like 18 months or 2 years or something. And I'd love to get back to that. But then I do like you've mentioned. You know, I've got 2 kids, and the idea of it's not so much them being like the outsider, because I'd be confident they would make friends.
Yeah.
But it's the disruption and the psychology that concerns me to some extent. I would just be like, what does it do to a 4-year-old mind to uproot him from everything he's known, from this town, from this house, move him the other side of the world where everyone looks a bit different and sounds a bit different, he doesn't know the language, and then it doesn't all work out, and then 4 months later we're back on a plane, we're back here, but in a different house, and everyone's like, where did you go?
Again.
Why do you look different? Why are you tanned now? And why have you picked up a Balinese accent? Or like, you know, like it's none of these things should matter, and I've got no, you know, full disclosure, no issue with Balinese accents or, you know, tanned or like whatever.
People speaking foreign languges.
Yeah, like,
in their own country.
It's the concern.
Why don't you just talk English?
But it's the concern. It's that it's coming from a good place. Like, it's the welfare of your child, and you wouldn't want him to be, or her to be, confused. And
yeah. So I think you become acutely aware of that as a parent. And
you
know, I want my children to do well in life. I want them to be happy and feel settled, and it's natural, sort of going back to what we were talking about earlier, and a younger generation expecting more, but it's natural that you want your children to have opportunities that were denied to you. So and you think, well, if I can enable that in any sort of way by maybe let's say we took like equity release or something, I can do some equity release, bank of mum and dad, I can get my children like onto the property ladder, or a bit of old-fashioned nepotism, I can get them a job at my firm, and that's their sort of first foot on the ladder. People are you're going to want to do that for your children because you want the best for them, right? And you want to see them sort of happy and successful and doing well in life. You don't want to see your kids struggling. So that's why I think we've got away from people leaving school wanting to be welders and van drivers and panel beaters, and wanting to go into much more successful and lucrative careers. That said, there's not a job out there in that area for everybody, so it's made competition quite tough. Working in manufacturing, we see we really struggle now to find people that want to come and work in a factory, because that's, you know, how things have gone. Trying to attract younger people to come and do an apprenticeship in a factory, like, who the fuck wants to leave school and work in a dusty, like, noisy factory for the next 40 years? Go, lovely, that's my career sorted. It's like, no young person says that. So the only way we can attract them in and say this is going to be what your career path looks like. You start here working in the factory, and then you do your apprenticeship for 3 years, and then 2 years after that you can start looking at, okay, well, what's my next job? And then you can sort of move into middle management, and then a couple of years later you'll be in senior management, and sort of that's how your career will go. That's the only way that we can attract people in. So
do you think, are you stuck in a sort of like this like awkward window in between like automation and not having enough staff at the moment?
Yes. So the thing with automation is it's fucking expensive, right? So to buy technology that can do the job of a person is going to cost, the starting point is going to be 200,000, probably up to £1 million for a piece of machinery that will
like per person's like work.
Yeah, so if you think,
Right.
we don't pay minimum wage. We pay much better than minimum wage, but I can pay someone, say, £10 an hour, right, to come and pack boxes. I can get a lot of mileage out of someone at £10 an hour versus a machine that would cost me £1 million to buy, install, wire up, program, and then the ongoing maintenance of that machine would be probably 10% of the machine's value every year.
Yeah.
To keep it up and running. Machinery is expensive, so as a manufacturer, yes, technology moves on and stuff gets cheaper, and gradually over time you'll look at stuff and say, okay, well, now I can buy a machine for relatively low cost in comparison to the wages that I'd have to pay someone to do that. But there's always going to be jobs that require people. So if I run a machine, I work for a company that makes, it's an FMCG, which is fast moving consumer goods, so it's stuff that's got a shelf life. You're putting stuff through machines, machines jam up, the wrappers get stuck, the lids for things get stuck in. Somebody's got to put those wrappers on the machine. Somebody's got to load up the cardboard boxes that stuff gets put in. So there's always going to be a need and a desire to have people physically present in a factory to do stuff. So there's always going to be someone that needs to do the maintenance on that machine and fix it when it breaks down and change the parts that are worn down. So yes, there is, compared to when I started there 21 years ago, there was a lot more people in the factory then than there is now, and we have automated a lot of jobs, like a lot of the packing jobs where you're putting stuff into boxes. A lot of it's automated. We've probably gone from probably 1,000 people in the factory 20 years ago down to probably about 250 now, so 25% compared to then. But there was a lot more. The jobs were a lot more manual then, so it's sort of picking up like great heavy sacks of stuff and pumping and dumping, and we don't do that now. It's all done by machine. So.
But then the sorts of people that did those jobs like 20 years ago, was it like Eastern European Brexity kind of immigration, and so they're no longer coming over, and so it's kind of flat effect?
So things were different. So when I started there, people that had worked there for 30 years, a lot of them were local, so they'd grown up in the area, and they knew that was a big employer in the area. A lot of them joined in the 1980s during the recession there, when things were very difficult. They were local, roofers, plasterers that were just completely out of work because the building trade had fallen on its arse, completely shit the bed, and so they just say, well, okay, well, where can I go? Where can I find work? And in a factory where there was huge amounts of manual labour required, they were exactly the right sort of people. And we say, well, we used to joke about them, but strong in arm, thick in head. They were the sort of people that you needed in a factory, because you just say, right, I just need you to pick up that sack that weighs 25 kilos from there, put it up there, and then cut it open and empty it, and then put another sack up there and another one, and I just need you to do that for 8 hours, please. And then say, okay, that's great. If you're going to pay me a wage, I've got money in my pocket. I can go home. I can put food on the table. And that's how it was. And you're back to your welders and your panel beaters and that sort of thing, manual labour. And over the years, that's gradually shifted away. Now those people have retired. We did have a contingent of people from the continent. We advertised on the continent for a while. Had a lot of people from Italy and Malta that had come to work in the factory, where we'd exhausted the local population. We were employing so many people that we just needed these sorts of people that were just going to come and do this kind of humping and dumping sort of jobs. As now, most of that has been automated. There's not so much sort of picking stuff up, crippling your back to do these sorts of roles. We do now employ a large contingent of Eastern Europeans, mostly Polish, but Bulgarian, Romanian, Ukrainian, that just want to come and work, and they work bloody hard.
I just thought like maybe it's like you must have a bit of a challenge on your hands to convince young people to come and work in a factory, because my perspective of it, if I was like a 22-year-old now, would be, if I go and work in this factory, my job's probably going to be automated in like 5 years, so am I just getting myself a job with a like career trajectory that's going to be just cut short in
but that's why we have to sell it to them and say, you do a couple of years in the factory, maybe you start your apprenticeship today, in 5 years you're probably going to be looking at moving to middle management or going to do something else, some other part of a career. You can, because that's the joy of working for a large faceless corporation. You can just you say, well, okay, one day I work in the factory, tomorrow I might be involved in quality and food safety, or I might be involved in packaging development, or I might be involved in research and development. So there's all of these other sort of roles that come with it, and that's how we have to sell it to people. We don't sell it and say you're going to be here packing boxes for 40 years, because that's just not sexy, right?
No,
it's just not sexy. So you can't compete with. So I do a lot of the recruitment for the apprentice scheme. I go into schools and talk to them when we do like careers fairs at schools. So you go and talk to young people and you say, well, what do you want to do with your life? Quite a few of them have already got something mapped out, and they say, well, my parents want me to be a pharmacist or a lawyer or a doctor, architect. Like they've got a steer from their parents already. The ones that don't have that say, well, what's attractive about working in a factory? Because I'm just going to go to uni, really, where I can say go and we're back to drinking and shagging again. But I can drink myself to death. I can fuck my backbone out for a couple of years, doss around for the first year at least, come out with a degree, shitloads of debt, but everyone's got debt, so what does it matter? And then sort of walk myself into a job for 21, 22 grand a year as a starting wage and work my way out from there. And so I have to sell it and say, well, you can have that 22 grand a year now. I'll pay you to go to college and do some qualifications. And then in 3 or 4 years' time, you're probably going to be on 40k. So then you say, well, what, your mates are going to be coming out of uni with 60, 70, 100 grand's worth of debt. You're going to be earning 40 grand a year with no debt, and you've got some qualifications behind you. You're going to be on, the way, and that's the only way that I can sell it. And sometimes you have to go as basic as, do you want a brand new BMW? Because I can pay you, I can give you the money for you to be able to go and do that. And if it's materialistic things that young people want, and if they want a life fulfilling career, and they say, I want to do something that makes a difference to the environment, and I say, well, go and get a job at the WWF, because I can't offer you that, right? You have to be realistic with people. I also do a lot of the recruitment for experienced manufacturing operators, and believe me, there is so fewer amount of those people out there now. It's almost becoming a specialised skill,
right?
And of those people that come, they've done manufacturing. That's what they know. So they just want to continue. They say, that's my skill set. I want to continue working in manufacturing. And so it's becoming increasingly harder to find those sorts of people that are used to working in a manufacturing environment, when again 40 years ago it would have been a lot more common, a lot more people would have done it. If you just think about in Berkshire, and manufacturing used to be all over Slough Trading Estate. That was people moved out of London to come and work in Slough Trading Estate, come and work for companies like Mars, Sarah Lee, Reckitt Benckiser, all of those sort of firms that had manufacturing presence there, that are now nearly all gone and been replaced with data farms and server housing and those sorts of buildings there.
And then, so I suppose then you have your work cut out, because if these were your sort of hunting ground to find experienced hires,
so usually you'd get people, they want to sort of, I'm not really getting on so well here, sort of packing gattos. I think I fancy doing something a bit different. And then you'd be able to say, well, okay, here's put a job in the local paper, and like advertise locally,
Yeah.
on the Star FM or something like that,
Yeah.
and say, this firm's looking for people, and then you'd get a load of people come over, or something would happen on one of those firms, and they would say, oh no, we're shutting down our bubble bath line, because it's no longer financially viable. A load of people will get made redundant, and then all the local firms would just snap them all up.
Yeah.
So the people, you get this sort of moving around, much the same way as younger people now moving in their careers.
Yeah.
But they're aggressively seeking it rather than being pushed into it, which is what used to happen.
Yeah. Like my advice to younger people in the tech world is I think if you're like 22, 25, like certainly in your 20s, and you have that ability to take a bit of risk, and let's say that I'm having a conversation with them about whether they could get that BMW, like they want the material stuff, right? My advice would be like, you should move around about 3 or 4 times, because that like if you want to maximize your earning potential,
you've got to move.
You're probably not going to get it by staying at the same company.
So you can move to another firm and get a 25% pay rise overnight. Yeah. Just for going to another firm.
Yeah. But I don't know how much is that specific to tech? I don't know. Or is that because the
I would
market...
say the same applies probably if you work in sales or like marketing.
I don't think it works in retail though. Like if you worked in a shop or McDonald's or something, like if you moved from McDonald's to Burger King to Wimpy,
minimum wage is minimum wage, isn't it?
Yeah. It's weird that, isn't it? I suppose because there's just this ever-present deluge of people who are kind of desperate for a job.
Yeah, I mean, we pay more than minimum wage because we want to become attractive to people that are looking for casual work to come and pack boxes. But they start off packing boxes, but then in the last year I've hired 3 people who come and worked as a temporary contract. 0 hours contract, and then sort of came in, showed what they were capable of, and they get then a what we'd call a permanent contract, which sounds weird, but it's like a guarantee. We guarantee them that they will have work every week, sort of going forward at this wage. So we have sort of like a casual wage that we pay. We have a permanent contract wage, which is more that we pay, and then from there they've then got themselves permanent work. So again, it's those opportunity sort of knocking, but you have to be there, you have to show what you're capable of, and you have to start somewhere to be able to then get to the next bit. So yes, advice for young people, be aggressive, because you don't get anything for loyalty these days, be it sticking with your car insurance or working for the same firm. You get fuck all for sticking with one firm. So be aggressive, move, find a fucking niche. And that's sometimes the hardest bit, and it's easy advice to say, get yourself into your own niche. But if you can get into something where there's relatively few people that know about that area of expertise, or it's just something that other people perhaps don't want to do, and so it's going that way now for manufacturing. It's not sexy, but we're having to look harder and harder to find the right caliber of people, and consequently the wage that you begin to offer people starts to creep up. You say, well, if I can't attract them for 30,000, I have to offer them 35,000. If I can't get it for 35, I have to go to 40. So that's how it starts, and we've seen it over the last year with like HGV drivers and that kind of thing. It's just like if you've got a skill that's in demand, then you name your price. So
and that's something that sort of transcends manufacturing. Obviously,
exactly.
hits every industry, doesn't it? Like I suppose the obvious examples in my world would be, and I forget if it's like Condor or if it's can't remember the other one now. There's a quite an old programming language, and a lot of the banks use it, and always have done for about 20 years, I think. So a lot of their like infrastructure stuff.
Commodore, they're running on a Commodore 64.
No, it's not Commodore. It's not that old. But it's probably not far off.
Basic.
One little ZX Spectrum is just about powering Barcap.
That's it. No wonder we had the financial crash in 2008.
I mean, they blamed it on reckless bankers, but actually it was
just,
IT.
the Spectrum fell over.
But yeah, like somebody has to maintain those systems. And they're too vital or too critical for them to unplug and rewrite and overhaul. And so they're sort of, teetering along. And these guys who learnt this language, back in the 90s.
Because it was de rigueur then.
Yeah. And then, like a lot of the other programming population moved on to other sexier technologies, your JavaScripts, your C Sharps, and so on. And these guys just stayed doing that. And they just, it was a comfortable job. And they just sort of sat back. And now what they found is over that space of time, their earning potential. Some of these guys earn like $1,000 a day, and they only work like 3 days a month. So they'll be on a retained contract. To look after the maintenance of the AS400 servers that have been creaking since 1984. In there, they can code in COBOL, and that's what they know exactly.
The sort of the rest of the you say your JavaScripts and C++ and Visual Basic is completely
well you see it now even with older flavors of JavaScript. So I do React, but there's still a lot of Angular work out there, and there's still even a lot of like jQuery stuff, which is sort of when I first started dipping my toe into coding was in like 2015, and you like all the coding tutorials were about jQuery, and a friend of mine who I worked at Sky with took on a jQuery contracting job last year, and it was paying the same as a React one because there's so few front-end developers who still fuck with jQuery. Nobody wants to do a contract in jQuery because it's kind of an old tech.
It's old and shit.
And there's this feeling that, if I do jQuery for a year, then I'll fall behind what's going on in React and the rest of the shit. So so it's like
FOMO.
Kind of. But it's like, so then the company have to pay a premium because they've got to, let's say it's me going out into the market. If you want to pay me to do a jQuery job for a year and take that risk of falling behind the rest of the market, I'm going to want some sort of premium.
You want some compensation for that.
And
then it gets increasingly difficult because then you can't just advertise for a jQuery programmer come and sort our systems out. Because those people are few and far between. You then have to go to an agency and say that's got
headhunt that motherfucker.
Exactly. And then you pay a premium for that. So it becomes increasingly more expensive. So this is what they do. They find these people and then they pay them a retainer and say, we want 4 days a month work out of you and we'll pay you X amount.
And you're always on call.
Always on call. And if our servers catch fire and fall over and shit themselves, then we just have to get you, out of bed at 3 a.m. And they say, well, okay, that's fine. I'll take that because for the rest of the month, I'm just going to be doing fuck all. So,
well, actually, what they do is you probably know this. You must work with like limited company contractors.
Facetious.
But they give you their like insurance thing where they're just like, I'm fine. Just sign here. It says that I've got 5 million insurance just in case I do something or I go missing or
place does burn down. It's definitely not my fault.
Ryan, we need to cut this off, man. Thank you so much for coming over. Thanks very much for your insight into manufacturing and for talking shit with me for the last hour.
Next time we'll make it funnier.
I mean, they're never funny, so it's it's fine.
It could be a bit of a dry subject.
This has been me peaking.
Next time, health and safety.
Next time, parking tickets and local bus services.
Go phone in if you've ever had a parking ticket that you think is unjust.
But so I'll be back next week. I'm not sure who my guest is at the moment because I haven't got my Google spreadsheet open. But I'll be back next Friday night with a guest and probably an episode of Fuck This Week covering the political movements on Tuesday or Wednesday next week. And I'll catch up with you all then. Thanks very much. Bye-bye.